certain boss one-shots. I enjoy that Path of Exile 2, at least currently, stands out from the crowd when it comes to gameplay, until your character is at a very high power level at the end of the game. It provides a different sort of challenge and engagement when compared to other ARPGs like Path of Exile 1 and Last Epoch. While in both of those games, much of the challenge comes from purely buildcraft, there's a bit of challenging buildcraft in P.O.E 2, but there's also a good chunk of challenge in the actual movement of your character, the dueling with monsters, and battling bosses until you get to godlike power levels in the endgame. I just love that. Now to tackle the result, or the complaint. Not being able to play the game for long stretches of time because of this level of engagement. And I have to say, this is something that I rarely see in comment threads or Reddit threads, but I see spoken about by a lot of content creators or streamers in the Path of Exile space. And it's an opinion I definitely differ on compared to a lot of them. I understand this reasoning, but I'd posit not all games need to cater to this sort of mindset. Yes, not even all action RPGs. There can be ARPGs that don't encourage mind-off gameplay so you can peacefully play for hours on end. Not all games need to encourage that sort of style of play. I think it's different during, let's say, launch weekend for a new patch, wherein you play a bunch due to the hype, then encouraging you to play and endlessly grind with ease for significant amounts of time after that. Well, that's in other ARPGs, and it needn't be in every single one. And on that point as well, I think you can still play P.O.E 2 for quite long stretches of time and have fun with all the challenge and friction involved, but you definitely need to have a different mindset when compared to its predecessor, for example. There are more inputs in P.O.E 2, more danger in P.O.E 2, and more engagement in Path of Exile 2. It does add up. I just wanted to throw this in there. I'm not talking about the stupid frictional elements like the extra clicks of quality of life, like transferring items from the stash in mass or trade, all that sort of stuff. I'm not talking about that sort of friction. I'm talking about the actual friction of engaging with monsters in maps or having multiple vendors. People don't like that, but I do think it has space in this type of ARPG where not every single vendor or shop is locked behind one NPC. Another example of bad friction is running into dead ends constantly in large maps. I really dislike the amount of times that happens, and I know it's been improved in 0.2. That's something that I would really love to see not happen in the future. And a lot of the bad friction they are working on actively removing, and it's shocking at the pace that they're doing this in Path of Exile 2. Breach splinters are a great example. You no longer need to pick them up one by one. They are all vacuumed up in P.O.E 2. Needing to open your inventory to use currency orbs on Strongbox, that's something that's been in Path of Exile 1 forever. And in just 6 months of Path of Exile 2 Early Access, they are adding ways to automatically remove that sort of friction from the game. It's all gonna build up. I think the danger element, though, is something that can be resolved a bit by adding more layers of defense to the game, which will come with time and hopefully quickly. However, the desire to easily blow up screen after screen, and I think that's where a lot of the pain with Path of Exile 2 comes from some people. I'll push back on it, even as someone who, yes, is playing a form of lightning spear. I don't want that, personally. I don't want that to happen very quickly, especially this early in the game's lifespan. I hope grinding your games continues to try and hone more meaningful combat. It's a very tough balance to achieve, but we're in early access, and hopefully we see some big swings on this, and they do not abandon that goal. And let's briefly talk about abandoning goals and visions, because I think Path of Exile 2 had a pretty clear vision up until the weeks after its early access launch. Grinding Gear games have been getting a lot of negative feedback pushing against the initial vision, even if it might not exist in some aspects of the game. And everything is getting a little murky. Are we going to get P.O.E 2 or P.O.E 1.5 here, as one of my community members likes to say? I hope they take a stand and push toward the former, the P.O.E 2 we were supposed to get, and try to live that out a bit more instead of towing to the loudest voices rallying against the game. I really want to see that vision in all its 1.0 release glory someday. Path of Exile 2 can steal the good from Path of Exile 1, and then try out all these new things that it really was supposed to explore. And honestly, I do think a lot of this is on the balance front. I think that skews perceptions a little bit because balance hasn't happened so often, so we're getting a skewed perception of what Path of Exile 2 looks like in the developer's eyes. And as we get more balance updates to these characters, it's going to hopefully be more in line with that advertised vision. It just might take a lot longer than we originally thought. Now for the even bigger question, should you need to put in a tremendous number of hours into the game, P.O.E 2, to be satisfied? And should the game almost solely cater to that audience who would like to play for numerous hours a day for many days beyond the initial launch weekend of a new expansion? This is such a tough one. Path of Exile 1 obviously caters to a niche, hardcore audience. You can play it casually, but many don't. I don't, or at least I used to not play it casually. It has been about a year since I last truly played a bunch of Path of Exile 1 during a league start. After all, it has not had a league start since then, and I've had another kid since then. That's crazy. So yeah, nowadays might be different from me, but people still play the absolute hell out of that game. 10 plus hours a day, every day for weeks, not just a super hype league launch weekend, and they still get so much out of it, and they can play it that much because it doesn't push back, and it has a lot of content in the game. As Palsteron said in my podcast with him, you should check it out by the way, for some friendly conversation about this very topic, an apt comparison to Path of Exile 1 is a game like old school RuneScape. It's just so chill. There's not much feedback needed. You can just sink hours and hours into it with very little engagement and still have so much to do. Is that the kind of game I would like to see again with Path of Exile 2? As someone who has less and less time available and sees there's an opportunity for a different type of ARPG experience that allows and even encourages a bit more slow progression, more meaningful progression and engagement throughout. No, I don't want to see that again in Path of Exile 2. I would love to see that new type of ARPG with a more relaxed progression and more engagement that doesn't exclusively cater to hardcore players. And remember, Grinding Gear Games audience captured hardcore players with Path of Exile 1, and they have a brand new audience, or multiple audiences, in Path of Exile 2. However, and here's the big deal, people, what I would like is obviously not what Grinding Gear Games is designing with Path of Exile 2. Full stop, at least right now. I'd argue they are designing the game meant to be engaged with far more in terms of gameplay than Path of Exile 1 or Last Epoch or Diablo 4, but it also contains that hardcore grind mindset from Path of Exile 1. There's extreme RNG when it comes to getting good items. There's extreme grind needed to engage with endgame systems as they currently stand. There's incredible grind needed to hit max level and just pure persistence. And there's extreme grind, well, pretty much everywhere past the campaign. And that's where the disconnect hits. That's the massive bomb they have to defuse. How the hell can Grinding Gear Games make this next-gen type of ARPG meant to engage you at every front far more than past ARPG titles, while mixing it with this hyper-hardcore grind mindset and gameplay loop? Especially, and note this, when eventually we'll be getting consistent 3 or 4 month expansion cycles. It's extremely difficult to grapple with myself. I love Path of Exile 1. I'm in love with Path of Exile 2, but I think I am steadily aging out of my ability to fully engage with the titles. And I think I share that sentiment with many others who found themselves playing Path of Exile 2. And this is why everyone's constantly debating, how are these games meant to be played, and by whom? After all, a game made to be good for everyone is a game perfect for no one, right? It'll be quite curious to see how Grinding Gear Games continues to involve both the style of gameplay in Path of Exile 2 and the time in required to engage with it fully. As I speak with more and more content creators, I find myself on the opposing side of both topics. wanting grinding gear games to embrace the often memed on meaningful combat and to make the game systems more accessible to those with a lot less time than they used to. Like me. Given this is a fresh title and a fresh start, I'm optimistic there's plenty of big changes to be made, and I'm sure I'll always find a stupid amount of time to carve out to play Path of Exile 2, but I'm still aching. I'll likely never get to engage with all the cool trinkets scattered throughout it, now and in the future. Thanks so much for watching this video, my fellow exiles. If you liked it, make sure you give it a like. If you want to see more content, hit the subscribe button, and check out this video somewhere on screen right now about how I almost quit content creation in full for Path of Exile 2. It's a true story, bro, and it's a good one. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you in the next one.
Alright, I just have to not
P.O.E.
touch me like that.
has received a review from IGN. Oh boy.
It only took an hour of playing Path of Exile 2's early access version to know I'd soon be firing up an Excel spreadsheet and saying goodbye to all my loved ones for the foreseeable future.
Okay.
Just when I thought I was out, the heartless maniacs at Grinding Gear Games have pulled me back in with a sequel to one of my favorite action RPGs of all time. The gameplay, endgame
Bad build, by the way.
mechanics, and insanely intricate build crafting all take massive steps forward. And even though it's subject to many of the usual early access jank caveats and suffers from some seriously stingy loot drops right now, there's already a lot to love about this fantastic, time-destroying ARPG.
That bro, 8,000 damage? Come on, man. Come on, what are you doing?
Thank God.
What are you doing, man? Oh, damn.
God damn it.
Per all the genre's usual tendencies, you can expect to spend time battling armies of enemies in search of loot, taking down big, gross-looking bosses, and teleporting back to town to sell off your spoils roughly every 2 minutes.
That's right.
In its presently unfinished state, it takes about 60 hours of blasting your way through the first 3 acts of the campaign that are currently available of a planned 6, twice in a row before you unlock the impressively extensive endgame, where even more angry mobs and shiny gear waits for you.
The Countess has escaped with the beast.
Path of Exile 2 doesn't exactly rock the storytelling boat. It sticks with the usual tale of horrifying abominations which threaten to destroy the world and immortal beings treating mortals as pawns. But that
I do think that the story for P.O.E. is relatively compelling with the beast and then going back in time to talk to Doriani to try to convince Atziri not to consult with it. I think it's interesting as somebody who is a fan of P.O.E. 1. Yeah, I thought it was cool.
doesn't mean it's boring or without the occasional twist.
It's the largest soul core I've ever seen.
Getting to know the cast of characters and unraveling the otherworldly culture and history featured in each act is a particular highlight. I grew quite fond of Alva, a treasure hunter who loves adventure almost as much as she loves making quick exits whenever danger shows up. And getting to know the Mariketh, a brutal group of
Damn, what the fuck?
What the? Oh my goodness.
Well, they hire the Suicide devs, the Suicide Squad devs to do color for the game? Holy shit!
Survivalist nomads was very compelling. We don't know what the second half of the story has in store, so the jury's still out on whether or not it'll stick the landing. But so far, it's off to a decent, if not entirely original start. And while Path of Exile 2 plays it safe with the story, it swings for the fences when it comes to ambitious gameplay. The result is one of the most irresistibly playable action RPGs to date.
Yeah, I think the story is fine. It's good. I don't feel like it's... Is it better than the story in Diablo 4? I think the answer to that is yes.
This seed.
Yes.
So if we are to heal...
After
It's my
picking one
opinion.
of the 6 available classes, with 6 more
story?
planned to arrive by 1.0, you'll start down the long path of making heads or tails of the incomprehensibly complex skill trees. They almost
It's not incomprehensibly complex. Guys, you just look at the stats, you think about, what am I doing? I'm doing lightning damage. Okay. I'm gonna search for lightning nodes and then put points in lightning nodes. I'm running out of mana. Maybe I should look for mana nodes and put points in mana nodes.